Hi everyone, my name is Neviana Zhgaba, and today I'll talk about my Data for Good journey. I'll also share some examples of how the Oracle Analytics community has participated in Data for Good initiatives, and also what other opportunities are out there to get involved. At the end of this session, we'll have a Q&A, and I'll be welcoming your questions. I work at General Electric. GE was established over a century ago by Thomas Edison. It has over 200,000 employees located in almost all corners of the world. We provide digital industrial solutions in the healthcare, energy, aviation industries. Throughout my 9 years at GE, I've held various data management, project, product, program management roles in almost all the businesses that you see in the slide, implementing global cross-functional solutions, especially on the financial services space. And most recently, I've been adding thousands of hours of productivity back to two of our main businesses, renewables and gas power, by using the Oracle EPM technology. I also serve as a director on the ODITAG board. ODITAG stands for Oracle Developers Tools User Group. It's actually one of the biggest independent Oracle user groups in the world. It's known mostly for its flagship conference, Keynote, where we attract some of the best speakers of the Oracle technologies in four communities or four Oracle technology areas: EPM, analytics, database, and Apex. Next year, we'll be featuring great real-world use cases and tons of great content from the analytics community or the analytics product stack. So make sure to be there. So what is Data for Good? Hopefully we all use Data for Good in the companies we work for, in our daily jobs, to add productivity to our teams, to create new insights, to focus on what matters within our companies, and make data and its insights available not just to senior leadership, but throughout all the levels of the organization. Now, in most companies that we work for, we also have volunteer initiatives where we can give back our time to our local community in various nonprofits, be it a soup kitchen, a school, cleaning up the local environment, and other activities. Now imagine, how about giving back with our analytics skills to help nonprofits in causes that we care about. Nonprofits don't have the luxury of having data and analytics savvy employees in general, and it won't take as much time from our let's say once a month or twice a year to be involved in such projects in helping nonprofits create new insights based on their data. And by creating new insights, they will be able to actually do even more good in the world. So basically, the Data for Good initiative, or the Data for Good movement, is about harnessing the power of data visualization, data analytics, AI for social change by empowering nonprofits through our data stories, the data insights, and basically using data to create new insights and outcomes for a better world. Differentiating via Data for Good. We mentioned that in our companies we have various volunteer opportunities that we can involve ourselves in the local community. And when we go and work for a company, we would like to get involved in such initiatives. But how do we differentiate ourselves via Data for Good? According to Gartner research, actually creating Data for Good opportunities within your company affects employee retention and employee satisfaction. But only when this is done outside of the PR lens. It's important that companies that support Data for Good initiatives do it, to truly help. Let's try to do Data for Good for the sake of doing good and not data for PR. With that said, I'm going to share now where my journey started with Data for Good. The ODITAG headquarters are actually located in North Carolina. And 2 years back, Hurricane Florence hit North Carolina, causing major devastation, flooding, damages to homes, damages to hundreds of roads. It led to the evacuation of 1 million people from the area where the impact was the greatest. Now we hear about natural disasters and hurricanes happening all around the world more often these days, but it's sad to hear about hurricanes and natural disasters. However, when that hits closer to home, when those natural disasters impact people that you care about, you also find yourself in a position where you ask, how can I help? The ODITAG members are located all across the world. not a lot of people are located in North Carolina, and we couldn't possibly help, hands-on. But we are technologists, and when I was talking to the ladies who work at our headquarters, she was telling me that it was very hard to find a way back from the evacuation sites to their homes. Mostly because the GPS systems and Google Maps and those sorts of navigation systems did not provide on-time information of what roads were closed, flooded, damaged. Also, they couldn't provide a real-time information on what gas stations were actually open. And so an idea came to my mind, and I said, we are technologists. We can definitely, this is a perfect opportunity for us to use our technical skills for good to help out the people that we care about in this specific example. And so I reached out to various ODTAG members across all the different communities that we have in social media, on Twitter. I presented to them the problem that we were trying to solve. And I had an idea because I noticed that the Department of Transportation of North Carolina actually was publishing real-time data of the road closures. And based on that data set, adding the data set from GasBuddy, overlaying it on top of Google Maps, we were able to create a real navigation app. I mean, it was a great achievement because it wasn't something that the Oracle community had created in collaboration with, different communities, the Apex database, analytics, like even EPM. I represented the EPM community at the time. It made us feel good about, hey, there's a potential here that using our skills, we could help not only when, people that we care about are affected, but we should probably create a movement and involve Oracle Analytics as a product in that movement as well. Now, where does Oracle Analytics fit into the navigation app that we built using Apex and database technologies? At the time, I was communicating out that this natural disaster hit North Carolina, and all the people that take care of our organizations throughout the year, all the people that organize our conference are actually all located there. Their houses were flooded. They were forced to evacuate. Their normalcy went, out of the door. Like there was no normalcy for months probably, especially for the people that were heavily impacted. And even though ODTAG members were able to relate and contribute maybe even in monetary ways towards helping out those members that were affected a lot, I still wanted to bring in a way where I could impact them even more and propel them towards more action. And the action that I wanted at the time was to have individuals join our efforts in creating that navigation app, and also individuals who would be willing to help out in the GoFundMe accounts that we set up for the ODTAG employees that were affected, whose homes were flooded. So I'm going to give you a fact. And let's start by saying, what if I were to tell you that Hurricane Florence actually poured over North Carolina as much as the average rainfall for an entire year in Seattle? That's a fact, and that's a pretty strong fact. Are you able to imagine the devastation? I just told you that, 1 million people were evacuated. Roads were flooded. Neighborhoods were flooded. People couldn't live at their normal situation anymore, or at least for weeks and months. I'm sure that, that impacts you as someone who hears all the facts. But then how about if I show you a visualization of all the roads that were actually impacted? As you can see in this visualization, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of roads that were closed because of damage and also flooding. On the left side of that visualization, you'll actually see one of the sections of the whole list of roads. And then on the right side, you'll see the full list of roads and basically the full list of the lines or the sections of the roads that were impacted. Probably I could have picked a better visualization to display the hundreds of roads that were impacted. However, why did I pick that particular visualization? Right now, you can see on the left of the screen a section of one flooded road from Hurricane Florence. It was only one flooded road, one line out of that visualization. Now, how many lines can you see on the left side of the screen? Hundreds. if you were to imagine, the flooding and all the water and all the damage across all those lines, it's a different experience. Let's go back to just seeing the visualization. Let's go back to just seeing, the fact that I gave you. When all three are combined, the facts, the data visualization, and an experience of one of the data points of the whole data set, basically a flooded section of one road, of those hundreds of roads, hopefully something else is triggered in you. Hopefully an emotional reaction is triggered in you that will propel you to take action. Any sort of action. You could help with relief funds, with Red Cross relief funds. You could help by donating to a specific GoFundMe account. You could help by joining our team to make the navigation app even better. But that was the whole point of combining all these three elements, the facts, the photos, the visualizations, to trigger that emotional reaction and hopefully propel action towards, in my case, the ODTAG community members. Another visualization that I put together is this. Right now, you'll be able to see a tech cloud of the names of the counties that were mostly impacted. And Cannonsville there is the county that has had the most impacted road. The bolder the blue color, the more roads were impacted. The bigger the font of the county, the more roads were impacted. It kind of looks like, a cloud of names, basically. And even though I told you and I shared with you the data logic behind the visualization, it's still just a visualization. On the left-hand side now, you'll see kind of a tech cloud, but not of words, but of houses. Houses in a smaller scale, all placed in a flooded neighborhood. And that's only one flooded neighborhood in only one of those counties. Now imagine the hundreds of flooded neighborhoods, just like that one that you're seeing there, in all the counties that you're seeing on the right-hand side in the data visualization. So again, paired together the facts, the visualization, and kind of a real-world experience of one of the data point or of the fractions of the data set that we use in our data visualization, hopefully can bring people to more of a deeper understanding and a way of connecting with the natural disaster, even though they probably are located on the other side of the world, and in the end, hopefully impact them to take some sort of action. The other visualization that I'd like to show you is that of the actual Hurricane Florence. But before I do that, this is a circular visualization, and it shows all the roads that were impacted by Hurricane Florence. And now you can see the hurricane that actually caused all the damages and the road closures of the hundreds of roads on the left-hand side of the screen. When you look at the hurricane, it looks scary, and it was scary. The visualization doesn't look that scary though. It's just facts presented in a simple visual way for us to understand how many roads were closed and probably what was the road that was impacted the most with those bold blue colors within the visualization. But unless you pair it together with the actual image of the hurricane and you understand that this was just one hurricane happening in the world, but it so happened that it impacted, the people that you care about. Yeah, it makes you think of natural disasters in a different way when you hear about them going forward. It's not one hurricane, it's not roads closed, it's actually thousands and thousands of lives that are impacted from ever-increasing number of natural disasters these days. Now, this story was also published in the Nightingale Journal of the Data Visualization Society, and if you'd like to know more about that, you can read the story there. Following up on the hurricane visualizations, actually, Oracle Spatial Studio has been used afterwards to visualize various hurricane paths by other community members in the Oracle Analytics circles. And one of them is the visualization of Hurricane Irma, visualized by Team Blamis using Oracle Spatial Studio, which is pretty cool. If you Google Oracle Spatial Studio and Hurricane Irma with Team's name, you'll be able to see a lot more visualizations and the way that he created the hurricane path. Okay, so we talked about Hurricane Florence and other members of our community that actually are using Oracle technology to visualize hurricane paths. But the hurricane or hurricanes are just one natural disaster in the world. From Hurricane Florence, I was kind of inspired to look at other natural disaster data sets that I could bring together, the fact statements with visualizations, along with a flavor of the real experience of the data set. Because from my point of view, all elements together move people emotionally and trigger kind of a more subconscious desire to hopefully act in preserving our natural resources. I will show you now 3 different types of data visualization created in Oracle Analytics with the same data set, all of them showing the same idea here, the melting of the Arctic ice. We see very clearly that especially in the past few decades, the melting of the Arctic ice has been accelerating. But at this point, it's just, a fact, an idea in our minds. Maybe the next day we'll probably will not forget about it, but it's not going to be in top of our mind. And now I'm showing you on the right-hand side how the Arctic ice looked in September of 1984 versus September of 2016. I don't have the latest visual from NASA on 2020, but that's 4 years ago, and imagine what another 4 years would have done. So the impact is pretty huge. And when you see the facts together with kind of the real experience or the real visual of how the data is portrayed in the real visual, I mean, probably it will still be not top of your mind the next day, the melting of the Arctic ice, but then you'll probably consider taking some actions every day to change the way you consume, to change the way you impact the environment, and preserve our natural resources, preserve our earthly habitat. All right, so from the melting of the Arctic ice, I'm going to show you the second step of my Data for Good journey. Currently, I'm in the board of a nonprofit organization, another one called FABI. FABI stands for All a Beautiful Earth. And the mission of FABI is to inspire people to take direct individual climate action by joining efforts with a global movement of people who actually want to preserve the environment. FABI is a group of global volunteers, mostly from the Oracle technology space. So we have a lot of Oracle database, Oracle Apex volunteers, and other non-Oracle volunteers as well. So we are almost like 30 volunteers ranging from, developers, content managers, social media managers to create the FABI app. FABI was also published last year in Forbes, and I encourage you to read the article and get to know the story behind FABI. So this is another example of where we can use Oracle technology for good. I mean, this is a real app out there, free to use for people across the globe to understand what actions, simple actions they can take every day to make a change in their habits. For example, one simple action relates to consuming, for example, less red meat. Probably that's a controversial topic around the world, but if you look at the data, you'd clearly understand why there's an emphasis in the reduction of the consumption of red meat. On the left-hand side of the chart, you will see that raising cattle actually takes more than the resources that it takes to raise chicken, pigs, eggs, milk, and every other basic nutrition that we need to survive as a species. During the years, the past decades, as you can see from the chart on the left-hand side, the consumption of red meat has actually decreased. I like a quote in here from The Economist that says, if cows were a country, the United Herds of Earth would be the planet's third largest greenhouse gas emitter. And so using the power of Oracle technology to bring to people and to make them aware about what simple actions they can take every day to help the environment, to help our species survive in a way, and using the power of Oracle Analytics, it brings all the pieces together. You can see the facts, you can visualize the facts, and then you can take action on the facts. And that's the beauty of technology. Technology itself will not save the world, but because of technology, we are able to get new insights and change the way we live. Another example of how FABI relates to Oracle Data for Good initiatives is the way that Oracle is being used to save the bees. In this sort of visualization that I created in Oracle Analytics, you'll see that the bee population, specifically in the US in this example, has declined. Mostly it relates to a decline in the beekeepers' numbers, but not only. The decrease in bee population has many reasons, and a lot of them are environmentally related. Now, what Oracle is doing is actually pretty cool. They have partnered with the World Bee Project. They are leveraging the cloud technology to better understand the decline in bee population globally. And they're actually devising or creating strategies to help farmers manage the bee and the pollinator habitats. And they're doing that by combining the AI from Oracle Cloud and sensor systems in partnership with, leading researchers. And with that, they hope to provide the farmers and also the general public who just wants to keep like beehives in their homes, knowledge and like solutions that they need to foster healthy habitats for the bees and for our pollinators. On to another example of where Oracle Analytics is being used for good in the world. We are jumping from bees to wolves. And actually, Oracle Analytics has been used by the Voyager's Wolf Project. And this project was an initiative taken by the University of Minnesota in collaboration with the Voyager's National Park. Their goal was to study the ecology of wolves and their prey over the summer in the park ecosystem. And then they specifically wanted to research and study the movement pattern of the wolves and their reproductive ecology. So now to track the movement of the wolves and the packs, they targeted multiple wolves. Then the location of the animals was tracked. And then based on, the latitude, longitude information that they gathered, they used Oracle Analytics to overlay that information on top of, a real map of the park to understand how the wolves moved around and especially how the packs moved together. And as you can see here, it's fascinating how, you can see in 4 different colors the movements of the wolf pack, but the pack remained together. I knew about the fact that wolves remain together as a pack, but seeing it visualized, it's a different understanding. It's very cool. So Oracle Analytics was actually used in here in a partnership with a university and a research organization as well to create real insights and present that to, the general public. Another way that Oracle technology has been used for good was a partnership between the University of Sydney with the Woolock Center for Sleep Studies, where they studied the patterns of sleep among the Australian population. And hopefully that research will lead to better understanding complex disorders in complex sleeping disorders and helping people out, especially these days. I mean, with all the stress of the pandemic, a lot of, sleep in people has been impacted. So looking forward to seeing the results of this research. And speaking of the pandemic, these days, you see tons of visualizations from tons of people, experts or not experts, different ways of talking about the data, interpreting data the way probably some see fit. And what I'm sharing here, you'll see the logo of the Data Visualization Society, the Nightingale Journal. They actually published an article recently with considerations that every data visualization expert needs to understand before creating yet another chart on COVID-19. We need to understand that, the stakes are high on how we communicate about the pandemic to the wider public. And visualizations are actually a powerful way of communicating information, that they can also mislead and misinform, and in worst cases, incite panic because of the data we display and how we display it and what part of a data set we display. So we are kind of in the middle of a complete information overload and in the same time even misinformation overload. So we need to consider ways that we should serve and publish these visualizations. We should also consider whether we should even publish visualizations in public. Does it add value, the visualization that we created? Does it uncover new information, or it's just some, another buzz of talking about COVID-19 that probably will lead to misinformation? deviating a bit from COVID-19, surely everyone is encouraged to leverage, the public data sets there, and hopefully they will keep in mind the considerations that behind the data set, it's actually the lives of real people. Other ways that you can actually get involved with Data for Good movement. One organization that piqued my eye in the past 2 years was Data for Change. And since 2014, Data for Change has been bringing talented data researchers, journalists, designers, technologists, and also civil society organizations together to help them unlock the powerful stories hidden within the data sets of each of these nonprofits. And so Data for Change partner with all those data experts that I mentioned previously, along with focusing mostly on the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. They have been able to help a lot of nonprofits just by bringing together all these data experts from different backgrounds. So if you're interested, check out Data for Change, and maybe in future day, the Oracle community can get involved with that initiative as well. Another really nice and powerful initiative that has been going on for a while is DataKind. DataKind brings, is the next chapter in using data science and AI in the service of humanity. And mostly it's a new way of unlocking the power of data for good, because they're focusing a lot on the advanced analytics piece of bringing data to life. They have a lot of partners. They have worked with many nonprofits. Some examples that you're seeing here is empowering women to get financing in disadvantaged communities, understanding water supply, water demand, or forecasting it in this case, focusing on human rights issues as well. Now, again, as I mentioned before, these social problems cannot be solved solely by the technology that we use, but they can definitely be influenced. We can influence the people that need to take action on these social causes by the insights and the stories we derive out of the data analysis process. So how can the Oracle Analytics community engage in Data for Good initiatives? We have a great technology stack. When I talked about Oracle Analytics, the AI, ML capabilities of the Oracle Cloud, Oracle Spatial Studio, and how Oracle Analytics can be used in conjunction with other Oracle technologies like Oracle Database, the Oracle Apex as well. We have, a great community of people across all the Oracle technology product stacks, especially the analytics community. We can engage Oracle customers, partners, employees, developers, students, and also partner them at the same time with nonprofit organizations, universities, government agencies, any organization that needs some expertise on the data and analytics part, to help them out in inspiring our communities to make a difference in the world through the power of data insights. And I will leave you with one final thought in here. If we as a community engage the millions of, again, customers and employees and people who use and leverage Oracle technology in their daily lives, and especially these days, leveraging the Oracle technology of the next generation, which is changing and growing and becoming simpler day by day, we could tackle the most pressing problems of our time, not just because technology can solve those problems, but because technology is a strong enabler to the people that will actually take action on those problems. Well, thanks so much, and let's open it up for questions.